Rookie Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers had quite a disastrous 2023 season. Bryce Young, as a rookie, didn't play too well. The Panthers were the first team eliminated from the playoffs. And looking, since they traded everything to get Bryce Young, they traded a lot of their future. They're left in a really weird spot as a team. So Hutchinson Brown football guys, I'm going to give you 5 steps on how to fix the Carolina Panthers this offseason, or at least move them forward. So for step 1, we always talk about a coaching hire here. And I was going to talk about Bobby Slowick as my head coaching candidate, but recent breaking news shows that the Panthers have already hired Dave Canales as their new head coach, former offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He worked with Baker Mayfield, the veteran quarterback who had been, traveling on different teams over the past couple of years. Overall, just a disappointment of a career. And he bounced them back. Baker Mayfield is on point to get a big contract this offseason with the Buccaneers, potentially a 2, 3, maybe even 4-year kind of deal. He's on track to get a big time deal with the Buccaneers this offseason after playing really good football this past season. He made the Bucs offense work really, really well. Even with Rachaad White, he made him look great. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, they looked fantastic when on the field. Like, this offense just worked. And it'll be really interesting to see how Canales works with Bryce Young. Baker Mayfield is more of a veteran presence. Bryce Young is a second-year quarterback looking for guidance. I think Canales will be able to provide that, but it'll be very interesting to see how those guys mix. I would still prefer Bobby Slowick, but this will be a very interesting hire. And overall, I mean, they gave him an interview. They clearly like something in him. So hopefully he's able to bring out the best in Bryce Young. So now moving to step 2. We need to look at one cut and one extension that the Carolina Panthers need to make on their own roster. The first thing they need to do is cut Dante Jackson, veteran corner. He's a 20-year-old corner. He's been around different places in the league. He's a good locker room presence, a solid starter for the team, but he's just not a guy you want right now. He's a 28-year-old veteran. The Panthers are entering kind of a rebuild phase. They're rebuilding their team right now over the next couple of seasons, and Jackson's going to make $15 million this year. It would save about $10 million in cap space for the Panthers to cut him, and the Panthers are in a really weird cap scenario right now. So I think saving cap was a great idea, especially with the players that are going to want to extend and sign in for agency this offseason. They're probably going to want to make a couple big moves to help out Bryce Young or help out their defense. So cutting Dante Jackson, saving that $10 million is just a really smart move right now. And looking towards the extension I want to make, you got to extend Brian Burns. I mean, there are questions of where Brian Burns is going to go in free agency. I personally don't think he's going to go anywhere. I mean, obviously, when you look at the team situation, we look at the cap situation, Brian Burns has all the leverage here. He has all the leverage, especially with the way he's played, to get the deal that he wants. And he's likely going to sign a big-time deal this offseason, no matter what team he signs for. But specifically with the Panthers, he has all the leverage because he knows he's a cornerstone in that franchise. He knows if they let him go, they're a disaster of a team. They need to extend Brian Burns no matter what. And I just say, what do you want, man? We'll give it to you. That's what I'd be doing as the Panthers, honestly. If I was at this point, I'd be giving him as much money as you can to keep him on the team. He's just worth it. He's a cornerstone player. So now let's go to step 3. We're looking towards free agency. There are a few free agents here that the Panthers need to sign. I want to specifically focus on the wide receiver position. Everyone's going to be talking about this draft class and how hype it is and how awesome it is. It's a great wide receiver class, especially when you look at size-wise. Like, pretty much all the top receivers in this class are above 6 foot, especially, it's a big size class, especially when compared to last year's really small receiving class. When you think about that, it's like, man, maybe they should just draft a receiver. I don't think so. When you look at Bryce Young, he's already a second-year struggling quarterback. You want to put him with a veteran who knows the league and can help him and lead him and develop him in this league. A rookie is not really able to do that because they're not in the league yet. It's their first year in the league too. So as much as I love Marvin Harrison Jr., as much as I love Malik Neighbors, I mean, honestly, the Panthers were able to get one of those guys, that'd be great. But as much as I love those guys, as much as I love some of these rookies, they would not be as helpful as a veteran wide receiver in the league. Someone like a Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Marquise Brown, who are all free agents this year. Also Michael Pittman, who's a free agent this offseason. Now, there is a realistic world where all 4 of these guys do re-sign with their rosters. That is totally fair. But if one of these guys gets away, one of these guys gets to free agency, that would be a great move for the Carolina Panthers to make. They need a veteran presence for Bryce Young. Even a guy like Calvin Ridley would be great. And I mean, even if they're able to find a wide receiver 1 elsewhere, getting a guy like Tyler Boyd too, a very solid veteran presence too. But I would prefer to get somebody like T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, or Marquise Brown. One of those 4, those are guys you can trust as a wide receiver 1 in this league. Those are top 32 NFL wide receivers, and they'd be great for Bryce Young and his development. So looking for some trade options, I have 2 different options here for the Carolina Panthers. Now, if they're not able to find a receiving option in free agency, or if they're not looking for it in the draft because they don't have a first round pick. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit later too. But looking at specifically trade options, if you want to trade for a wide receiver, Devontae Adams would be a really, really good option. Devontae Adams, on the Raiders, obviously with Antonio Pierce now being hired as the full-time head coach, it doesn't seem like they're going to trade Devontae Adams away. Devontae Adams would probably want to stay with Antonio Pierce and the Raiders. But, hey, this is a business. Anything can happen. If the Carolina Panthers offer up enough, maybe it would be a second-round pick. I think that might be enough to trade for Devontae Adams from the Carolina Panthers. Maybe even less, honestly. He's an older guy. They might be willing to give him up for less. But I would think it at least takes a second to get Devontae Adams. He's a stud wide receiver, and he's a target hog. He's somebody that can really help out there. And also, speaking to all these veteran receivers, you have a rookie on the team that you drafted in the second round just last year in Jonathan Mingo. You want a veteran presence to help out Jonathan Mingo in his development in the league because it's clear based off a few plays you watch Jonathan Mingo make. He has talent. He has athleticism. He just needs some development in this league. And I think a veteran receiver could help him do that as well. So now, another trade option for the Carolina Panthers. I like Evan Neal. Evan Neal, tackle for the New York Giants. They drafted him very highly just a couple of years ago. He hasn't had a great start with his career for the Giants. He's had a really rough career with the New York Giants. They've been terrible in terms of their offensive line. They've allowed some of the most sacks in the league this past season specifically. And it's just been bad. I mean, the Giants team has been a dumpster fire. It's been a really bad place to play. Evan Neal might just need a refresh. And the Carolina Panthers might want to look at him and say, hey, I know you need a refresh. Let's get you over here and help out Bryce Young and, maybe develop you into a better tackle than you were in New York. I think it's a really good option. I think they'd be able to get Evan Neal for cheaper too. Obviously, he was a first-round pick, but it's been a couple of years of disaster for Evan Neal. I think you can get him for a solid price. So I'd be interested. I'd be looking for that as well if I were the Carolina Panthers this offseason for a trade. And now finally, looking towards the draft capital that the Carolina Panthers have. They have 1 second, they have a third, and they have a handful of later round picks as well from other teams. Now, no first. What are they going to do in this draft? I mean, obviously, they could do a variety of things. Personally, my top targets, I think they need an interior defensive lineman that's going to interrupt the run game. They haven't been able to stop the run this year. They were one of the worst teams in the league at stopping the run. Their offense was really bad this year, so teams would be able to score them a little bit early and then just run the clock out all day long and not let Bryce Young have the football in his hands. That's why you saw multiple shots for the Carolina Panthers this year. That's why you saw many games where the Carolina Panthers scored a touchdown. Like, they just didn't have the ball on offense at all. And even when they did have the ball on offense, they flat out sucked. The Carolina Panthers need to help when it comes to their run game, when it comes to their run stopping ability. And then looking towards the offensive line as well, Bryce Young never had time to throw the ball, man. He was always under pressure. They were never able to stop, defensive linemen from coming in the backfield and making havoc for Bryce Young. I would want some offensive linemen, some big guards, some tackles to help him out. Just literally any position on the offensive line. I wish I could be more specific, but also it's just like every position, center, guard, and tackle struggled for them. Like, they just don't have a superior offensive lineman anywhere. They just didn't have it this year. So I'd be drafting any of the positions. And also in the later rounds, if you want to take a couple shots at a running back, I would not mind that either. Taking a couple shots at a running back, we've seen some later running backs lately hit, and you have Miles Sanders, I get it. You have Chuba Hubbard, but like, these guys are just not great. Maybe if you find somebody in the later rounds like as a dart throw, or maybe even like in the third as like someone to establish the run for Bryce Young. A lot of people like to discredit running backs, but establishing the run in the NFL is a really huge thing for NFL teams. It just is. It's just the fact that we can find so many guys that can do it in the NFL. You can just find so many guys that can establish the run because it's not a hard position to learn, especially when you're transferring from college to the NFL. So if you can find a third, fourth, fifth rounder, or maybe even later, a guy who can help them establish the run a little bit, that'd be nice. So then that's going to be it for this video today. That's it for the draft for the Carolina Panthers. That's fixing the Carolina Panthers in 5 easy steps. Thank you all so much for tuning in.